Hey guys, welcome back to the Apostolic Bird Podcast. This is episode 3. In this episode, we are going to continue the interview that I was having with my sister Amber on the topic of racism. And just a little refresher, I am white, obviously. If you are watching this live, you can see that I am white. And my sister is black. So I wanted to hear from her perspective items about our childhood, and then also how she has grown up and what she may or may not have experienced, and also how she is planning to raise my nephew, and she's currently pregnant with twins, so how she's planning to raise my other nieces and nephews. So with that, let's get into part 2 of the interview with my sister Amber.
So I have a mother who's like, I'm going to get this college education so I can take care of myself and take care of my kids. I have a father who graduated high school early, granted didn't go to college, but found a career in a trade that works for him. Both of them told me, you have to do well in school. You have to get good grades. You need to be able to go. They didn't say I had to go to college. It was just kind of understood. But my dad's whole thing was, I don't want you to have to work outside the heat or work in unfavorable conditions if you don't have to. So I expect you to do well with your schooling. So between the two of them, I did well with my schooling because it's what is expected of me. I go to college. That's what I wanted to do. I became a nurse. I enjoyed it. I went back so that I could teach other students. I married a man whose family was the exact same way. His father is a chemist. His mom is a homemaker, but she worked as well. She didn't, just not do anything. She worked. She took care of her kids. She homeschooled her kids. My husband's grandmother sent her children to college. Okay. So this is a woman, once again, in the South who sent 3 children to college, 2 nurses and a chemist. So once again, it's expected that you are going to contribute to society and not be a drain on it. So what does that mean for my children? My children are going to know you will go to school. You will do well in school, whether you go to college or not, that's up to you, but you will do something with yourself because that's what's expected of you. That is what an adult human being needs to be able to get done. You need to take care of yourself and be able to take care of your family. That's what I expect you to do.
Right. I love that. I also want to go back to Mr. Kenneth and your mom. More so Mr. Kenneth, like Mr. Kenneth graduated and did everything that he did, but didn't they have Keith while he was still in high school?
Yes, he did have a child while he was still younger, but his job was, at the same time, he knew in the back of his head, I have to take care of this person. This is not just something that happens and oops, somebody else to handle it. I need to take care of this person and do what I need to do to handle my responsibilities,
Right, exactly. And so I think it's telling because we're learning about this whole side of like the history going back to like your grandparents. And they all went through, they were in the South, very high racial tension. And we see the split, like they chose a different path, a different mentality. Like they're the ones, grandparents are the ones who said, no, we're going to speak properly. No, we're going to contribute to society. No, we're going to expect more from you. Or it's I'm a victim and everybody's out to get me and I'm bad and I'm only expected to graduate and not do drugs and, but also say that like his life hasn't been perfect, Mr. Kenneth. Like, I mean, having a child in high school is really tough. So like he could have gone any way. His life could have reverted back to what everybody else is tends to revert to in those scenarios, but he didn't let it. He was very successful kind of coming through that phase and then met your mom and started a family, etc. Moved away from small town Mississippi, I mean still in the South, but to New Orleans and
And I think that was one of the things that I always found interesting when I made friends in different places. Like they would get to know me, and a lot of people, they always thought I was stuck up, and it's like I'm not a chatty person. Let me rephrase. I did not used to be a chatty person. I was a very shy individual, so I would talk to people if you talk to me, and it took me a while to form close relationships. But most people, they thought we were rich. I'm like, I don't think we are rich. I don't know what you're talking about, but they all thought we were rich. And I'm thinking, no, I'm just like everybody else. But I think once again, that is my idea of rich might not have been the same as theirs. My idea of rich is you live in this, huge mansion and you have all these cars and you have all these, go on these big, huge vacations. Other people's concept of rich may just be you live in a house and not an apartment, or a trailer, or with your grandma or something like that. We lived in a house. We had a garage. We had a vehicle for each person. So in some people's concept, that is rich, So for me, it was interesting to always have to tell people, no, I'm not rich. I'm just normal like everybody else is. But that was my perspective versus theirs, So I don't want my kids to grow up thinking that they're better than anybody else because of where they live or the vehicles that they have. They're not. You're just a regular person, So that means everybody, whether they live in a trailer, whether they live in an apartment, whether they live with their grandma, they're just the same as you. They just live in a different spot, just
Right. I think I remember students, I don't know if it was middle school or whatever, thinking we were rich just because we lived in a house. It was like, oh, not necessarily. Like, even when, our family went through some financial times, it was like, no, like I started working at 15, you work jobs throughout college and whatnot, even though it was still different financial scenarios when you were in school versus like college specifically versus when I went to college.
Yeah, I mean, I had scholarships to pay for college because I didn't realize it at the time, but there's no way our family could have afforded to send me to college. We didn't have that kind of funding,
Right.
It might have looked like we did, but we didn't. So that was one of the reasons my parents were all big on you're going to make the grades that you make, because I had scholarships and I had TOPS and I had all those things to be able to afford college. So yeah, just it may look like I had more opportunities and more things given to me, but a lot of them I had to work for as well. You work for scholarships, you work for TOPS, you apply for it. And that is what afforded me to be able to pay for my gas. Was I worked 2 on-campus jobs while I was in college. I worked a one on-campus job and I worked at a bookstore. So those funds helped me pay for my lunches at school. They helped me pay for my gas to go back and forth. So were we rich? No, we were taken care of, but we were not rich by any means.
Right. Same here. I worked, I think our parents covered definitely insurance on like the car and obviously provided like dinners and whatnot, but again, provided our own gas. I was buying my own clothes at this point. Books, all of that was on us. And so same for me is I did my best to get the best ATC score I could get for scholarships. So same thing. I got scholarships. I got TOPS. I worked jobs. I remember, I think the first year, or at least the first semester. No, the first year, I worked 2 jobs. I worked on campus and I had Toys R Us, and then I had on campus and I worked for Mom for a little bit before finding the groove. And then I got like a grad assistantship. Thank God for grad school, because grad school, they don't have scholarships or anything like that. But I saved all my grant money to do summer school while still working. I took, I think, 4 classes one summer to utilize that and to graduate. So it was a lot of planning. Like when I say I graduated early from undergrad, I did my whole program in 3 years. People were like, wow. I was like, you don't get it. It was planning, because I needed to use the resources that I had strategically to get through school. It wasn't just somebody paid for me, because our parents, I think my FAFSA literally said that our parents could contribute like $30 to my education. Like that was the financial position we were in. Like when I was in college, like we just were not, we had a house, we all had cars, and we weren't going under, but like people just assumed, oh, you're rich because you have these things. And it's like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. Because during the time that we were in college is when my dad started his new business. So he stopped working. And so like you said, our parents provided for us. They did. But keep in mind, who did the grocery shopping? You and me.
We did.
I paid for a lot of groceries, right? So I'm not saying they didn't take care of us and they didn't provide for us. But during the time when we were very expensive with college and cars, it was us supporting ourselves a lot, So yeah, we're not superheroes that we can do that on our own. I know a lot of people do that and more, especially now that college is more expensive, but it can be done. You just have to be willing to think about what's important for you to pay money for and what does not need to happen right now.
Right. Living off of Taco Bell's dollar menu. That's what I did.
Taco Bell was wonderful. Loved it.
That 5-layer burrito. And if I was feeling fancy, getting those little twisty cinnamon twists, that was, and water.
College life for us was knowing that Taco Bell was a place we eat every day because McDonald's and Burger King was too expensive.
Exactly. And then we'd walk everywhere, as far as getting around campus and whatnot. And and finding all the solutions. Like I found it was better to rent my books versus buying them and trying to sell them back to the books. Like it was like you finding those ways to make it work.
Right.
But like about it, and hearing your side and my side basically being the same, is that it didn't matter that you're Black and I'm white. Like we literally went through the same family scenarios and situations, regardless of our race, and neither one had it better than the other. But one thing that I do want to ask you about, or specifically thinking of school, is because this is something that I remember, and I didn't have a problem with it, but I wanted to get your opinion on it. But it's about like certain scholarships you got based off of your race. Like I remember going to an award ceremony where you got an award and a scholarship just because you were Black. How do you feel about that?
So we did go to a ceremony, but I don't think I got a scholarship for it. I got an award. It was about, Black students of the university, and it was that you had this certain GPA and you were doing so well in school. So I went to the award ceremony, but I didn't get a scholarship for that. My scholarship, like I said, was the TOPS. And it was a scholarship that, at UL at the time, you fill out one application and they just send your application through all these different scholarship opportunities. And I happened to get one there, and I got another one for being the valedictorian of the school. And I got one through the hospital that I did a little bit of work at the same time. But I never got any scholarship for my race per se. That being said, yes, there are some now. There's some then too. There are definitely scholarships available for, the certain races that you have. And you know what? I 100% understand that there are some levels of inequality when it comes to opportunities. You may be, it's not your fault where you were born and where you're raised. If your parents can't afford to move out of a certain situation, then that's what you have to deal with, right? So if I don't have the funding to get into this program and have the laptop that I need and the class fees that I need and this that I need, well then I'm appreciative of their scholarships for that. But at the same time, just because I'm Black doesn't mean I'm the only one that's going to live in that situation. There's going to be white people that live in that situation. There's going to be Asian people. There's going to be Hispanic people that live in that situation. That just seems to be the one that gets the most highlight, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So
correct.
There are scholarships out there, and I'm appreciative that there are scholarships available, and I encourage all my students to apply for whatever scholarship they can get. But that's one of those ones where, we need to really look at it and make sure that things are being, if not fair, they're at least being to a point where we're not dragging somebody else back to put someone else forward, I guess you could say.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so kind of that mixed with the award you got. Thanks for clarifying that wasn't a scholarship, that it was more of an award. Mm-hmm. And what I meant by I didn't have a problem with it is I wasn't like jealous that you got some kind of award or anything like that. Yeah. But the overarching theme is that, low income can impact any race, even if it currently is impacting maybe one more than the other, or it's perceived that way. But that view of being rewarded because you're a successful Black person, like at some point it should just be against all races, like white, Black, Asian, everything. Like we should all be that. Mm-hmm. Like think that having awards for the fact that, hey, you're a Black person that is successful. And again, you didn't come from the same background. So it's almost assumed that like you did come from a very bad, low income, grew up in the ghetto background, and wow, you made it to college and you have a good GPA. Mm-hmm. Like to me, that's like I feel like that's a version of racism in a sense, because it seems like, oh, we're rewarding you, but it's also we're putting this stigma on you and this assumption that because you're Black, we must reward you because you would like, it's a miracle that you got here. And so I also couple that with the mentality of, especially today, that it's like, it's almost flipped, that it's like our ancestor, or this happened with all of our ancestors. So now you must make up for it. And it's still creating a divide, is basically what I'm trying to say, is via multiple avenues, whether it be affirmative action or whether it be, awards for specific races, or just this mentality of this happened. So, I can't think of a specific scenario with the victim mentality, but I know it's out there of a lot of people saying things like that.
Well, to answer what I think you're going with that one, I will agree with you to a point that some of it is a little bit overkill to say, oh, look at you, this Black person who's done so well and you made these great grades. I'm so proud of you. Here's our own separate award ceremony for it. Versus a Caucasian person, it's like, well, you can just go to the general one. I get that sometimes that can be to an excess, but at the same time, even though I did not come from a background where it wasn't expected of me, I can see how, if you're coming from that background, you go through this and there's nobody there to support you, that is a good time for you to realize, hey, I'm doing something, I'm doing right, I'm going, and it means something to someone, Even if it doesn't mean anything to my family because they're wondering why I'm wasting my time, wasting money, it means something to someone else. So I see how it can be a little bit over the top, that why does there's just the special Black ceremony, but at the same time, I see how it's a way to pull that expectation out of the general public to say, hey, there's a lot of them doing this. You can do it too. Why aren't you trying for it? So it's going to have your pros and cons on either side of it. Which one is most important and which one's pulling the hardest? I really can't say, because I'm not in the community enough to see those big changes. I haven't been around in the world long enough to see those big changes, but I can see both sides of that particular instance.
Sure. Sure. I know that like there were award ceremonies that I went to for the scholarships, like for the College of Business, with everybody.
Right.
Who got the scholarships, and everybody's getting awarded, and the family, because you attended those, I think, and maybe Mom, if she was able to make it, but it was everybody. It was all the races. It was just every scholarship for everybody in the business School of Business who got scholarships. We're having a banquet night, and we're just giving a certificate out to basically everybody to say congratulations on getting the scholarship with your efforts. And for the various there was multiple scholarships with multiple criteria, right, whether that be or whatever it be. But I think going back to the specific scholarships, to your point, and I can kind of see it in what you're saying, but for me, to be specific about it, is I think that it shouldn't be based off of race. I think it should be based off of, hey, do you have support? Kind of going when you said, like, if you had no support and you came from that, rougher background, it's like, I don't think it should be race based. I think it should be, no matter what your race is, if you came from that background, like, being able, taking what you said, but saying, like, take the race aspect out of it.
Right. I mean, there are those good scholarships where, you're the first person to go through college in your family, or you're the first, citizen of your family to be a citizen of the U.S. There are those that are available as well. But like I said, we have our own small view of the world. I can't say, or I can't speak to how that affects, community wide, whether or not those specific race-based scholarships are worth it or not. They are worth it for some students to be able to get in and get the funds that they need to go through school. Should we have more scholarships available for everyone and not just have a bunch of them for a certain race? That's something that probably needs to be looked into, but that's not something I can make a overall call on, I guess you could say.
Sure. Next question that I wanted to ask you is, overall, have you felt in danger as a Black woman? Or, and to add on to this, since Jonathan's not here, has he ever communicated as a Black male, or knowing it, like, has he ever communicated feeling in danger? Because I know that's a big topic that I've heard. I've seen it in the news. I've seen it on certain celebrities that have talked about, like, you know, they have to teach their sons, like, if you get pulled over, like, you have to act this certain way, or like you're gonna get killed by a cop, basically, or you're gonna experience racism if you get pulled over. And it's not just asking the question in a sense of like getting pulled over, but in any kind of scenario like that.
I would say in my day-to-day life, no, I don't feel in danger. I feel like I'm a part of my community here, and there's not anything that I would worry about. If I get pulled over, I plan to act like I always do, like I have some sense, you know? I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to catch an attitude. I'm going to respectfully answer your questions, give you the stuff that you need me to have. And if there's a problem and I don't appreciate the way something is going down, I can always address that later. It doesn't need to be addressed right then and there. Sometimes you just need to get your stuff done, get out of the way, and move on, and things can be fixed later on. And I think that's one of the things that I think about as a mother to, you know, a Black male child is people say, oh, I have to teach my kid that they can't do this. I don't want my child to think police officer is a bad person. I refuse to let him grow up and think that. In my opinion, in our house, police officer is the person you go to when you need help. You know, if there's something going wrong and you need help, you find that police officer to help you. So when he gets to the point of, you know, driving or things like that, it's going to be a matter of, okay, son, you get pulled over, you're going to act like you have sense, like you always do, because that's what I expect of you. So you will talk to them respectfully. You will answer their questions respectfully. You will not create extra drama that does not need to be there. And if there's a problem with it, or if somebody's treating you unfairly, you get through the situation, you come home, we'll deal with it after that. But there's no reason to create drama. And I think that's my thing. You know, my husband and I, we used to love to watch cops on TV. And I know that was a huge thing when cops got taken off. But a lot of the times you see the situation and it's like, if you would just keep your mouth shut, so much would have not happened. Keep your mouth shut, be respectful, move on. You know, it's what it is. There's parts of everybody's job that they don't enjoy doing. So yeah, if I have to, you know, at the hospital, there's parts of my job I don't enjoy doing. And if you catch an attitude with me while I'm trying to do that, then I might catch an attitude back with you. Honestly, I'm not, because you know that's not the kind of person that I am, but that's going to irritate me more in that situation. So I'm pretty sure police officers don't enjoy pulling people over because they know it's going to be a confrontation. Why are you escalating the issue? You know, do your part. Get done with it, move on. They don't want to have to irritate you any more than they want you to irritate them. Why is this a big deal? You know? Now, yes, are there some situations where there are some corrupt police officers? 100%. Yes, there are. But there are corrupt accountants, there are corrupt nurses, there are corrupt teachers, there are corrupt everybody. You can't just blame that on police officers. That's just dumb.
Agreed. I agree with that. Going in line with that, with more of the drama aspect, you know, in the height of COVID, there was a lot of, you know, racial tension. And just a quick story that happened to me is there was a couple of individuals. So basically at this point, we're all working from home, right? And I think I was at my desk working, possibly. I just remember being in my room. And so I was at my desk and there were cars just like zooming up and down my street. And so my apartment had, the apartment I lived in at that time had a little side street that did go to other buildings, but it was kind of one of those, like, not a lot of people took it unless you worked at one of the office buildings down the road or you lived at our apartment. So the fact that people were like zooming down, it was like, this is a little bit more of a hidden road. So this seems off. So of course I went and I looked out the window. And there were guys, like, there was like 3 cars zooming up and down, and they were doing donuts, like right outside my apartment. I was a first floor apartment. And then my car and other people's cars were like parallel parked right there against the apartment. And so they're doing donuts, like right there by the lobby, right outside my specific apartment. And so I literally just took out my phone and started recording. I didn't know what race the people were. Like their windows were tinted. I wasn't looking at that. I was recording, and then I called the cops because people were pulling donuts outside my house. They're getting really close to people's personal property, the other cars. And so I called because it's illegal. It's dangerous. It's stupid. And so when I called, of course, the cops came and caught a few of them because other people as well in the apartment complex called. And when the cops showed up, they called me and was like, hey, can you come show us the videos? So I showed them the videos. So I'm standing outside. Then that's where you see the few people who got caught and got pulled over are Black. And then their friends are down there and they are like yelling at the cops. They're doing the whole recording and they're instigating. And then they see me and they're like, she's white, we're Black. Or some of them weren't Black, but they were not white. Mm-hmm. And they were like, she's out to get us. And they, like, one person legitimately wanted to fight me. And their friends were holding them back. And the police officers were like, just go back into your apartment. And I was like, these are my neighbors. Like, some of these people live in this apartment complex. And actually that same night later on, like, I passed these people in the hallway, like some of the guys, and they didn't recognize me. And I was like, what if they had? Like, what would they have done to me? And again, I didn't start it. There was people, regardless of race, doing something dangerous outside of my house. Mm-hmm. Did what was appropriate to do. If you were white, Black, Asian, pulling donuts outside my house, I'm gonna call the cops on you.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was just an interesting time in our culture that people won't take responsibility for their own actions, and it becomes a race issue, and it becomes she's white, so she must be out to get me. And it was just it was nonsense. It was extra. Hey, if I'm doing donuts, yes, I don't want to go to jail or get caught, but like, if I get caught for it, like, take ownership, take responsibility. Like, I actually, because I was speeding down a back road, I didn't realize I was going that fast, but a cop got me. And what did I do? I was like, this is what happened. I saw you. I looked at my GPS. I looked at because the GPS will tell you what the speed limit is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. I looked at how fast I was going, and I was like, it's over, you know, it's all on me. So I just did what I had to do. Hey, just trying to get to my Pilates class. Didn't realize how fast I was going until I saw you. And here's my license. Here's my registration. Okay, thank you for the ticket. and move on.
Own your stupid. If it's your stupid, own it. You know, I've done dumb stuff too. Got pulled over a couple of times, and both times I was speeding and both times, of course, I'm headed to church. Shame on me. But, you know, I get pulled over and I didn't come out with an attitude. It's like, I'm so sorry. You're right. You know, let me get you what I need to get. And they let me go. So you, as a white person speeding, you got a ticket, but me as a Black person speeding, they let me go. So are we the unicorns of the real world, or is reality more even than you would expect? Mm-hmm. How are you supposed to know that? But no, if you're going to do something stupid, own you stupid and know that it's not that person's fault, that they are doing their job to stop you from doing you stupid. Just what it is.
Right. Exactly. And I was actually going to ask you if you've ever gotten pulled over in any scenario. I think I just recall that there was one time at your old house before, it was like way before you got married. I believe you were headed, maybe not, but I remember you were headed somewhere and there was like two cops and because you were like looking for your stuff. And so they came almost.
I was being suspicious, not intentionally, but that was once again on my way to church, you know, going really fast in a 45, and they pulled me over. So I'm like, nope, that was me. I was 100% doing the wrong thing. So I was looking in my glove box to get my stuff out because I knew they were going to give me a ticket. And so one police officer comes up on one side of my car and the other one comes up on the other, like on the passenger side. The one on the passenger side surprised me because I didn't expect him to be there. And then I looked at the other one and they both had their hands on their gun. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to get my stuff to you. I didn't know any better not to be digging in my car when you can't see what I'm doing. So that was an experience for me to be like, maybe that's not a smart thing to do, you know? So those kind of situations, that's something I'll tell my son. You get pulled over, wait until they come to you, ask for what you need, and then you do it. But when you go digging around, moving all over the car, you look suspicious, you look like you're up to something, and that's what they're trained to look for. So those kind of information for my son, by all means, but not a matter of, oh, if you get pulled over by a cop, you need to start recording because they could beat you. No. If you're going to be sensible, I don't think anything like that's going to happen.
Right. And so the same for me. I actually have my license to carry, which should be in their system. Mm-hmm. So I think about that of like, if I start looking like I'm digging through something, they already can automatically assume on me, a white person, that I might actually have a gun, which right. I don't carry a gun in the car with me, not currently, but I legally could right. be carrying and I have the license for it, even though in Texas they've taken that requirement away. But it is in the system that I have a license to carry a gun. It is more likely to assume that I have one than I don't. So if I start, so again, you just have to be wise and smart and think they're trained, because I've seen videos of a cop that gets shot because he pulled somebody over and the guy just started shooting him through the window. You know, they never know what they're walking up on. So again, I like your mentality, or the way you said that, if this is how, you know, this is what they're trained to do. So be smart. And I did plan to ask you how you're planning to teach Sylvester and the babies. You know, pretty much answered that, but any last comments or thoughts on this topic that you want to share?
I mean, it's like I said from the beginning, all these, you know, everything we talk about is our own opinion based on our own implicit bias, based on our own experiences. So my experience of not having a lot of racist acts against me determines how I see the world, you know, and I see it in a certain way. Some of my students may see it a different way because they've been raised differently and they've had things happen. You know, I've had students who've had, you know, shootings around their apartment and things like that, and that's what they have to deal with, where that doesn't happen where I live, you know? So I understand that your perspective is different from mine, but I think the biggest thing that will help everybody and that will help the world is being willing to see that there is a different perspective, right? Yes, you were raised differently than I was raised differently than you were. So instead of fighting and being angry and hateful towards each other first, how about you tell me your side of it? I'll tell you my side of it. If we still don't agree, well, then we can argue about that at that point. But we need to have some kind of human decency to say, hey, I don't know what has happened in their life. They don't know what has happened in my life. So instead of taking what we see here and adding stuff to it, I'll actually talk about what actually happened and go from there. You know, and I think that's our thing, is we're so willing to jump to conclusions that we don't give anyone the benefit of the doubt. And we need a little bit more benefit of the doubt right about now, because we can't believe anything that we see. So if you can give me real tangible information, and if you can give me a moment to think about what I'm trying to say instead of taking what I say and running with it and creating more than what I actually said, we could get a lot of things done. We could get a lot of things solved, honestly.
I agree with that. I think talking and communication is key versus jumping to assumptions on either side.
Right.
And trying to see the world through, like, taking what not our parents, but like, I'm thinking from like the white perspective of people saying stupid stuff or people believing certain things. Like, for example, like when our parents got married, it was told to me that like, oh, I have no problem with your parents or with Mr. Kenneth specifically. Like, he's a great person, but I just don't believe in interracial. And I believe that the person who said that to me was someone who grew up in that. Like, they were older and their parents had put a little bit of prejudice in them, and they grew up in an environment that it was whites and blacks never married, and it was new, and so it's like, hey, why don't we step out of just what we maybe grew up with and like open to, just because this is what you grew up with, this is what was said, doesn't mean that that's accurate.
I mean, that's one of the big things, once again, going back to my class, the assignment that we do is we're talking about implicit bias, and I have them take a test. Take a test that kind of gives you an idea of what your implicit bias may be. Okay, well, I took that test and my implicit bias says that I may have more of a bias towards this person versus this person. So I asked them to think to themselves, why do you think you got those results? Not saying you're a terrible person or that you're racist or that you're ageist or that you're anything. Why do you think those results came? And they think in themselves, oh, well, my grandparents used to say this, or there's this person that lived nearby that used to do this. And then that point, you can use certain strategies to change that implicit bias if it's something that you need to change. So, right. And like we said, just because you have that implicit bias does not mean that you overtly act that way. I may prefer younger people to older people. Does that mean that I'm going to treat older people badly? No, I make conscious decisions to treat everybody equally. But in the back of my brain, based on my experiences, that might have been the way that things work in my brain, you know? So I think that's one of those things is you have that chance to see, okay, I was raised this way, but is this what I actually think, or this is just the way that I'm used to things going?
Right.
And if it's what I actually think, is that correct, or should I make some changes to that? And that's taking personal responsibility for yourself and the way you respond to the world instead of react to the world. Respond instead of reacting, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. I agree with that completely. And that's both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your story and background and your opinions on everything. I really enjoyed this conversation. So I'm glad we recorded it and we can share it. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't have to fight. We didn't have to scream. We didn't have to yell. We were all good.
Actually, I'll say this. You're actually the one who taught me how to have actual conversations.
Oh, yes, I do remember that. You asking me when you were younger, so when are you going to hit me for the first time? I'm like, I'm not going to hit you. And then you said, well, what if I hit you first? It's like, I'm still not going to hit you, but I'm going to fuss at you. You know, it's like, what kind of question is that? You know?
You know, growing up with, again, like I would say we were poor white kids living in country Alabama. I mean, our house was like, it got turned into basically a 4 or 5 bedroom house with 1 bathroom. And there was all of us, and us kids were as country as you could get. And our way of communicating was, I'm going to beat you up or fuss at you and yell at you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to get our points across, you know. And so I remember being, you know, I don't remember asking you that, but it doesn't surprise me that I asked you that. I remember things where we would disagree, and we would have to, you know, that, hey, it's okay that we disagree. We don't have to physically fight. We don't even have to like yell at each other. But if we disagree, we would choose to disagree,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like we would go to our separate rooms and just be like, but it was like, yes, we disagree on this issue, but we're not at odds with each other.
Yeah, we're not enemies. We just disagree.
Right. And that being okay. And so it was nice to have that dynamic of being able to learn
Mm-hmm.
from each other, you know. And I think that my question to you is, earlier you mentioned you used to be a very shy person. And I was like, I almost said, you're welcome.
That's very true.
Extrovert, somebody who's always in your space. You know, I know we had to get through that. You know, I remember putting the little sign on your door is like, all I want for Christmas is for you to love me.
But that was once again a difference in people. Your idea of loving was, you know, not smothering, but smothering people in affection and hugging and all kissing and all that stuff. And for me, it's like, I'll spend quality time with you. I'll talk to you, and I will pay attention to you. That's showing my love. So we had to come to that understanding of what love looked like, and it looks different for different people.
Right, exactly. And then, you know, years later, us like watching the same TV show from 2 different bedrooms, just yelling at each other back and forth, TV show. Or then you grew to a point where, you know, we would get in my bed and we would just, in my twin size bed, there would be 2 of us watching TV together. So you could see the growth of it. We needed that communication. We, you know, had those moments where we were at odds on things, but we worked through it. And then, you know, both of us grew and took on qualities from each other.
Mm-hmm. We improved each other, which is the good thing.
Yes, I agree with that. I started reading more. You got outside more. We skated. You know, it was good. Yeah. I our childhood growing up together.
I think it worked out well. It's what we needed to grow into the people that we are, to deal with the situations that we've been put in. So it gives us that unique perspective to be where we can truly say, I don't care if you're black or white, you can still be my family. Doesn't bother me one bit, you know?
Right. And so I may have told you this yesterday, but part of what it just happened to happen while I was already wanting to talk about race, but someone mentioned about, like, not going into her whole story, but it's almost like white people saying, I don't see color. And because of our experience, like because of me growing up in interracial household, I really don't see color. Like, you're equal. We're equal, you know?
Well,
and
I think that's the thing, that comment. It's not that you don't see color. You see that there's a difference, but what you have that understanding of, just because you're a different color doesn't mean you're completely different from me. And I think that's our thing, is that I don't want it to be that I don't recognize that you're Black or that you're Asian, that you're whatever. I recognize that you're different, but I recognize at the same time that we can be completely the same, even though we look different. And even if we are completely different, that's fine, you know?
Right. So everybody comes from different, whether you're white, Black, whatever, everybody comes from different backgrounds, different households, different cultures. You know, you can grow up in the same country, even the same state, and be completely different in your background, regardless of race. Even I'm learning Korean right now, and like, Korean culture is completely different than American culture. Do I recognize that? Absolutely. But do I think that they're inferior or superior to me or any other race because of it? Absolutely not. It's everybody's equal, and like you said, everybody's humans, and everybody has to work hard to achieve what they achieve. So yeah.
Yep.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Alrighty. I love
you. All right, love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
That is it for the interview with my sister Amber. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I found it to be a really good conversation, and again, it was one I had never had with my sister, so it was really cool to see her insight, her perspective, and just have this whole discussion. So if you are interested in things like this, please follow, subscribe. I am on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify. So please follow, and I'll see you guys for next week's episode.